Alliance with me, Andrew Hayes, your host. Today I have Nia on. And before we get going, just remember to go over to the website, thealliance.live. Uh, we have a Facebook page. We're going to set up members only merchandise. It'll be on the show. You can also sign up to become a member, an ally, um, and there will be merch over there. So visit it, check it out, help us build this show, get it better, share a link, so on and so forth. Nia, thanks for coming on today. And you want to, we've had discussions and conversations about a lot of stuff, but your highest passion, I guess, is education. Is that right?
Yeah, so I believe that all the state's ills, I believe that not all, but many of society's problems start and end with education. So I think that, a lot of things that come with, many things that come with poverty, many things that come with like healthcare, many things that come with the judicial system, the welfare state, all those kind of things, all are directly inverse to education. And so it's not really earnest of us to say that we're going to in some of these programs that we're going to improve some of society's problems if we're not talking about starting with education.
So when, and my passion is economics, and I don't disagree. Education ties into it. It's a big thing. Um, and But the one thing, so economics is a science of means, not ultimate ends, but how we get there. And education, the question of education is a purely means based issue. What I mean by that is that there's other issues that are about the ultimate ends, like the crux, like abortion. Somebody's either talking about the rights of the mother or the rights of the unborn, and those things are uh, irreconcilable. There's there's just irreconcilable conflict on an issue like that. Whereas if you get down into education, you're not going to find any Democrats or any Republicans that are like, yeah, you know what, uh, we don't we don't need our kids to be educated. They don't need to know how to do math or read or know anything about science or history. Uh, Everybody wants the next generation to be well educated, well rounded, be able to function in society, and to know things, right? Um, so, and that's not a unique issue. I think most issues are like that, but it's important to acknowledge that fact because we shouldn't be at one another's throats when it comes to education. It's not much of a concession to just acknowledge that our opponents on the other side of the aisle uh, want kids to be educated. I'm going to disagree with how they want to do it and how we go about that. But let's start off and just acknowledge that the other side isn't evil, right? Is that
I,
fair?
I had a call with somebody this morning and I just purely said I don't believe that they actually know how to move children. So um we on the right and on the left, we have a lot of these premises and a lot of these thoughts and theories and things that are number one, not fact based, not logic based, not data based. And then number two, for a multitude. So there's two problems. And I want to make sure I say this. Somebody has said, well, I've been teaching for 30 years and we are not doing some things that much different. And I want people to understand one of the problems with education in the state of Oklahoma is not, is that the other states around us have made an immense movement to actually move up. So, and we have not. And so, while we may be doing the same thing we were doing 20 years ago, that same thing is pushing us down because everybody else is actually doing something to push them up. And so that has pushed us down into the 49th, 40th, 50th, 48th place in education in the state of Oklahoma. So I want to make sure that people understand that. How do we get there? How do we get moved out of that spot is going to take a great effort by us to actually put forces to actually move us the other direction. And so that and that is where I think some of the I mean it, we can get right down to it. Cindy Berg just did the audit of Tulsa public schools, and I would say that if we audited other school districts and other school systems, all the ones she's audited have had some of the same issues. So she has $62 million. Hold on. She had $62 million in contracts that were consulting contracts. And so that means that we don't necessarily have a teacher pay problem or a teacher or a funding problem. We may have an allocation problem in how we're actually spending those funds.
Sure.
And because $62 million can pay a lot of teachers.
So, as I mentioned, I'm big into economics, and one of the key questions that an economist asks over and over again is compared to what, uh, because what you compare things to makes a difference. So when if we say that the cost of fuel is high, compared to what? Compared to last week or last year? And the politicians will do this. They'll talk about how crime is down, and they'll pick a point in the 90s when it was at an all-time high, and they'll say,
Right.
well, crime is down right now if we compare it to this. Well, let's not compare it to this. Let's compare it to 2019. Oh,
Right.
as it turns out, it's up. So it all depends on what you compare it to, and to only compare our education output to the other states today, I think I mean, it's worth doing, but it shouldn't be the only thing we compare it to. What about the education that we had in 1910?
Well, I
What if we
mean,
go back and look at history?
well, we've been at the height of education in the 1950s, 1960s. I think we had the most educated population somewhere in those areas. A multitude of things. We can go all day. I think you and I could go all day on things that happened in the 70s and the 80s after the civil rights movements that's actually pushed down educational outcomes for a multitude of reasons. And we could just talk about that. That's a whole nother subject.
Sure.
But I would love to get back to where we are, because in the 50s and the 60s, even into the 70s, I think we were in the top five, in the world in education. Now you have your Baltic country, well, the Norwegian countries, Norway, Finland, even a country. Somebody said something, and I was like, well, Japan, we have a better economic system, we have better resources, better everything. How could Japan be that far ahead?
100%. And there's something else too in that vein that is there's a cultural difference. When you start talking about the Nordic countries and Japan, there's a cultural difference. There's a cultural difference between Oklahoma and Arkansas and Mississippi that you don't have in states like Massachusetts and Connecticut. Uh, Down here, we put a lot of emphasis on athletics. It's a big deal, man. In Massachusetts and Connecticut and Rhode Island, that's not really what they're about. They don't. They're not athletes. They're not athlete driven. They're not competition driven. Uh, they're a lot more academic driven than
Yeah,
we
it's
are.
No, I would agree, because it's not like Friday Night Lights where they shut the whole city down. Like in Texas, they'll shut a whole city down for Friday Night Lights. And so, yes, I would 100% agree. They have a very different, but a friend of mine actually works in North Carolina in the Research Triangle, and he literally was just working at UPS. So, not like he was an executive somewhere or something. And he married a girl in Texas, and she made, she had a really, really good career there. So they decide they're going to move to Texas, right? Great. They're in love, new, they're 50 something, but they're excited about new opportunities, right?
Yeah,
He moved to Texas and was like, what in the word have you taken me to? Like, he was like, this is like a whole different planet. He was like, if I tell one person you cannot mail a pot of collard greens to people or something just crazy like that, he was like, things that they never had to deal with in North Carolina. Well, one of the things I told him is that in the Research Triangle, people are highly educated. So therefore, when they understand that you can't mail certain things, you can't mail firecrackers, you can't mail things that they're trying to mail, all the time, and so, that's one of the reasons I am really big on education. I think that education, on the right and on the left, that we're sitting here having conversations, especially on the right, saying we want low welfare, we want this, we want We want to end the government state. We want to end all of these subsidies and things like that. But then we don't want to have a real conversation about how do we do that. The only way to really do that is we have to have people educated to where we give them a fair shot. That's the reason why I think I told you this on the right or on the left. We have not had any real welfare reform. We really haven't had any work reform. We haven't had any of those things. I think Clinton was the last one to do it. I mean, so and we've nominated a whole bunch of Republican and Democratic presidents since Clinton, but they know because they're not willing to do this because they know that we're not giving people a proper education.
So yeah, and there, I mean, you want to jump to my solution? You know, here's the question: is what's out there that the government does better than the free market? Where does monopoly and compulsion work better than freedom?
Well, I mean, you and I really gonna disagree on this because in other countries, if you look at Finland, one of the reasons their education system is so good, it is a nationally ran education system. In that they have a federal education system that runs the education system. If we even look at Florida, which they've made dramatic improvements in education, what do they have? They have county ran school districts, so there's not 500 some school districts like in Oklahoma. There are county ran systems, and when you have a county ran system, it's harder. What we do in Oklahoma, which people don't like it, they don't want like what I'm supposed to say here, is we're picking winners and losers. We're saying these kids deserve a good education. They live in a nice house. They live in a good neighborhood. They get a good education. These kids over here do not, and so they get a bad education. And we've become okay with that because year after year, these schools are failing. Some of the schools where they have Oklahoma City Public School has probably like $500-600 million budget. They haven't produced any passing results with the exception of Ryan Walters, gift that he just gave them to get them off the F list. But I told a principal and a teacher there, I don't think they're going to curve the test every single year. So you're not going to be able to stay off the F list unless y'all make dramatic improvements. So we're basically picking winners and losers. And anytime we have a situation where we put our thumb on the scale at that point, so it's not really a free market, it's not really an equal system or anything like that, because we basically said winners and losers, where we do have other states in America that are actually doing it right and producing the outcomes that we would like to see on a wider spread level than what we're seeing in Oklahoma. Not
And
just
see, that's
Mexico.
why I opened up with talking about compared to what, because uh, we kind of, I think I remember us talking about this. Go and find me 100 or 1,000 students that graduated from Florida last year, and and just ask them a basic question of history, or a basic economic question, or you know have them explain the apology of Socrates. They've got nothing. Our the reality is that even the Florida, even Utah, even Massachusetts, those are the top three states. Not in that order. I don't know what the order is, but I know that those are the top. And it's interesting that Florida has skyrocketed into that top tier. It's also interesting that Utah is so high, because that's a deeply and long held conservative state, and they're
Well,
number one.
I
Where
know, but I'll tell you, people are not gonna like this, but it's very homogeneous. The people in Norway, when you look at the Nordic system, they asked somebody. I watched a special, and they asked, "Do you think you could reproduce this in other more metropolitan countries and things like that?" And the lady from Norway, I don't know if she's from Norway or Finland, but still, she actually said we are very homogeneous, and I'm not sure that we could reproduce this in other places, because in more in France and Europe, well, in France and Europe and other places, they still have kind of the same system. United States, Mexico, to where we're picking winners and losers. And so as long as society is okay that you're going to get less because we've deemed you to be less, or you deserve less, as long as society's okay with that, we're going to get the same outcome. I mean, the reason why some of the things I say is so radical, in the sense, is because I'm actually saying the silent part out loud. they've said you go to this school and you should get less. And society has said, hey, though we're not going to worry about those kids. But the one thing I always tell them is that we have to be worried about the least among us. Not only did the Bible call us to do that, in most religious doctrines, so we can say the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, anything always calls people to look for the least among us. But then also in this society, we're so close knit. Your daughter might marry one of these guys. You know what I'm saying? Or your son might marry one of these gals, and then all of a sudden, you have this person in your immediate family, and that kind of thing. And or I mean, I've seen it happen so many times. You've probably seen it happen. One of these people that we've deemed lesser comes to your neighborhood and robs you, that kind of thing, or robs your child or something like that. So we have to be worried about the least among us. And if as a society we want to have a different outcome, and we want to live in a society that's not so chaotic, if we want to live in a society where people are not driving up and down the street shooting each other, then we have to have some of these hard conversations.
So there's kind of a percentage that I just look at. And it's kind of unavoidable. I hear what you're saying. I think it's also worth saying that there is just a 4%, uh, which is small. It's very small, and it's not all of what you're talking about. But it's worth pointing out there's just a part of society that just fails, and
Yes.
there's like you can go back. One interesting stat, you talk about comparing what to what. Look at the literacy rate in England in 1904, before the government started uh, running the schools. When the schools were ran by the churches and otherwise privately ran, when they did homeschooling, the literacy rate was 96%. There was a 4% failure rate, and
That's what
that's
and that's what it is in Finland. I think they have about the same thing right now currently.
yeah. Right.
So,
So those, you kind of have to drop those off. Don't let that affect the curve.
well,
But then
go ahead. Go ahead. But you do know, I want us to be clear. I understand exactly what you're saying. We should have some at the top. Me and you have had this discussion. We should have some at the top. So we have some population that's going to do right no matter what. They can make it on the moon. You could drop them off on Mars and they're going to make it, right? Then
right,
we small percentage that's probably never going to do right. You know what I'm saying? No matter what, they're going to really, really struggle in life with rules and society and things like that. What about the middle? Because
yeah,
right now
right,
we have schools in Oklahoma City that only have a 5% pass rate. You understand what I'm saying? And
yeah,
we have 89% that's in the bottom quartile. How is it that you can? Because statistically, it's statistically improbable, unless there are forces that are coming to get it against it. It's statistically improbable to have 89% in below basic. That's the lowest rate you can get. That's an F. That means there are forces that are coming along with it, because we should have some at the top, a huge amount in the middle, and a small amount at the bottom. That's the natural wave of society. Like sociology, psychology, anything like that tells you we should be on that curve.
right. No, and so I think the idea that I'm going with there is that yeah, what so so with that part being said, the market, when you look at somebody that's poor, not homeless, not destitute, not in prison, but when you look at poor working people, uh, they are richer than kings were 200 years ago. The amount of
Oh,
wealth that we have, that you have a refrigerator full of fruits and vegetables in the winter, and I don't know if I lost you, but um, oh, there you go.
Hey there, I'm JJ Humphrey, and I'm inviting you to join me on a journey every week with my podcast, Elephant in the Room. This is where we dig deep, expose corruption, stand up for taxpayers, and defend your rights. Every single episode. But I can't do this alone. That's where you come in. By signing up and supporting this mission for as little as $5 a month, you'll help me continue to shine a light on the issues that matter most to all of us. With your support, we can reach more people, uncover more truths, and fight the battles that need fighting. Join the movement. Be a part of Elephant in the Room. Thank you, and I'll see you on the inside.
So no, the idea is that people who we look at, or maybe we feel like we're poor, we're not. We're not poor. We are very wealthy, uh, not just in terms of other countries or third world countries, but even first rate countries. But back in time, uh, and the reason I say that is that if we abandon socialism, and so socialism is government ownership of the means of production. It's when government produces your car, when government produces your home and produces your food. That's socialism, and we have that in our education system. The state, the government, is producing education, and I'm saying that we should abandon socialism. We should drop it and let the free market function, and even those at the very bottom will do better than they do right now. There's always going to be an income gap, a discrepancy between the rich and the poor, but with freedom, the poor do better than they would without freedom.
But I would just what I'm saying to you is that why do we need to reinvent the system when the system is working well at other places? We need to just maybe match what they are doing because other places don't have. Japan doesn't have the problem with power. I mean, with education that we have a problem with, and they have less than what we have. So we actually are wealthier than the poorest people probably are wealthier than most people in Japan. So why is it they can do right? They have a nationalized social, what you consider to be socialism education, and the one thing we already have a problem with picking winners and losers, and in this country we've already deemed a whole bunch of people to be less than. That is one of the reasons I'm not a fan of even closing the Department of Education, the federal Department of Education, because the federal Department of Education has had to intervene too often to protect people, disabled people, minorities, all kind of things like that, that we have deemed in society that they are less than. So if without those backstops, our natural instincts maybe come in a little bit too much in a capitalistic society, and we end up with an even bigger gulf in at the winners and the losers, because we have not been able. New Orleans right now has a whole charter system, the whole entire school system. They have no public schools. All of them are charter, all of them are free owned, all of them are doing their own thing. They have not, true enough, it has produced better outcomes for poor people. I would 100% agree with you on that. But we have to have real conversations. People in Oklahoma, if I start telling Deer Creek that we're not going to have Deer Creek High School anymore, and we're going to have some type of charter school, people are going to lose their mind. The same thing if we go down to Tahlequah or go to, Jinx, Bigsby, these places that want to do football and all those other things, they will just lose their mind. So in this system, what can we possibly get done? And in that, we're not gonna, if the Department of Education closed down tomorrow and they go tell the people of Jinx they're not gonna have Jinx High School no more, they're gonna have some, because all of these rules that we've made many of the rules that we made in the last 10 years in education has been so that people can move around and things like that and play sports. So I mean, some of my neighbors is like, well, we want to get into Bethany. Can your child run a 4.4? They like, what do you mean here? If your child can't run a 4.4, you're not going to Bethany. I mean, they let people in, but they don't let you in unless you can run a 4.4. That is the problem in this society. We can't have an education system. And so the legislature's like, oh, we made a rule that the money can follow the kid. Well, that's because Jinx kept getting dinged for bringing in people and to win state championships in football. It wasn't because they were worried about getting poor kids a better education. That's not actually it. They were just saying, I want to be able to move athletes in so that I can win more state championships. And so when we have real conversations like that, then then we know that that's not going to happen to where we're going to change the whole system. Could we possibly develop a system in a idealistic world, in a real world? Could we possibly set up a system that would do better? Right now in Oklahoma, we have one homeschool academy in Edmond that has 500 kids, and there's probably 20 of them. So, I mean, there's thousands and thousands of kids who are being serviced through homeschool. So, are we doing that a lot more now? Yes. But the reason is not because I homeschool my child, not because I necessarily want to homeschool him. Somebody right now is picking him up for me. I homeschool him because I refuse to send him to a failing system. I tell people all the time, if my child is going to go to an F-rated school, he can go to my house. I'm not going
Yeah,
to be driving around and having all these conferences and all these trying to explain to people why we need to do this and why we need to do that. I can just do it in my house.
yeah. Well, and so you started off, and there was a lot there. I don't know if I can cover all of that, but you talked about Japan, homogenous society, different culture. It's the same. It's obviously Japan is not the same as Norway or Sweden, but uh, it is the same in the sense that it's homogenous and has a wildly different culture than what we do. The athletics is, yeah, you know what? It would be it would be crazy, but this is how we talk about it. You talk about crazy. Again, this is one of my examples that I go to. Uh, just imagine if you had a time machine and you showed up in 1700s Virginia and started running your mouth about, well, we need to free the slaves. That's crazy. You don't talk like that. Nobody. That's not on anybody's radar in 1710 Virginia. Okay, that's not where the Overton window is at. I don't know if you've heard of the Overton window.
A little refresh me.
So the Overton window is the range of acceptable ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for the society. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to stretch the Overton window. You can't break it. You can't just smash through it. Uh, or I don't know, maybe that's not the
But
analogy.
the, but
Smash
the
through
question
the window
is,
inside it.
I agree with you that it wasn't very popular, but when we look back with hindsight, we understand that even though people held beliefs like that, it wasn't right. And I think that's what we miss with history, is that, people held these beliefs that, we should have slave people. A lot of people now deem that to be bad. I deem that to say, I don't, we shouldn't have yes, most societies have a low wage workforce and things like that. And America was definitely built on a low wage workforce type of model or no wage work system. But is it right? And that's a question that we have to ask as society.
Well,
Is that right? And I think that's where we are right now as society. Bernie Sanders, all of these people are saying, like, do we want to have so many people in poverty?
little bit but what I'm saying is that they're not actually in poverty. You go back and ask the question, compared to what? Yes, compared to the more affluent part of our society, they're poor. But you're always going to have poor people. If if the poorest person in the country had a yacht, the richest person would have 1,000 yachts. And then we'd be talking about, well, this poor guy, he only has one boat to take out on the ocean. And it's so sad. And he doesn't even have a staff to run his yacht. It's so sad. You know, it uh, like I said, keep it in perspective. And what I'm saying about the Overton window is that we are not in the place where, and I admit that, but we're trying to move that window over. So I'm talking about it. We're not going to abolish the government-run school system tomorrow. We're not going to end socialism, in the next year. But it's something to start thinking about because technology is in a place and I don't think I am a pure free market guy. Even in 1900, we would have still been better off with the free market system. But I can at least wrap my head around, okay, we're in the middle of the prairie, books are scarce, paper and pens are scarce, and we need to build one schoolhouse to send our kids to, and we'll use tax money to do it. You can wrap your head around that. But my gosh, in today's society, there's curriculum online for cheap. There are tutors all over the place. There's all kinds of ways you can have a upperclassman tutor a younger student and teach them. Uh, there's all kinds of ways to get an education without relying on the government, and
I know.
I think
That's
we
just
can do it.
that's so radical though, because and the reason why I would be opposed to something like that is because we know some people don't value. I mean, you ask my mom and I was having this conversation this morning. I have a child that's not in college, and my mom, I said to her, he has not hit hard enough times, because I'm in both perspectives. So I have one child that went to college, didn't finish. He's now 28, 29, and he's going back because he's decided that $15 an hour was not enough money. Whereas when he went the first time he went to college, he was like, I can make $15 an hour, so he was like, I'm not going to go to college, and I'm not going to finish. Now he realized $15 an hour, he can't have a family, he can't have a real life. So he's going back to college and he's about to finish. Well, I have another child. My mom was like, you need to do something with him. You need to do something with him. And I said, Mom, I just offered to send him back to college as well. And he turned it down. So I can only help people who want to be helped, and at some
Right.
point, he'll decide that that's not the lifestyle he's living is not okay, and he'll hopefully go back to college and or because I actually told him just to go get an electrician's trade because you can make a lot of money, and he's actually really bright. You can make a lot of money just being an electrician, but I'm talking to him about those things, but I can't force him to do that because he's 25 years old at this point. And so we know, though, as a society, if we want to fix some of society's ills, we have to feed people spinach even when they don't want to eat it. So we
Okay, but
don't
whoa,
want.
whoa, whoa! But you can't push a rope. That's the thing. You cannot push a rope. You can't do that.
But we used to.
I will say this though. I will say this: when there is a value, when things are free, and I understand our government school system isn't free. My taxes are going to it. However, from the child's perspective, and even as from the parent's perspective, they're not on the hook. They're not having to write a check. And when something is free, it's not valued. But when you write a check for it and you pay money that you worked hard for, now it becomes valuable. And that's one way for sure that when people pay for it, they're going to value it.
But as a society, why is it we're having to change so much? That's one of the things. So I'm kind of like the conservatives in that sense. Why do we need to go back
Yeah,
and make it great again when education was great again? We need to make
right.
education great again because we had a great system. Everybody was getting education. People understood as a society. I will say the Kardashians are some of the most popular people in America right now. And we can have a conversation about that. But that is not, it's not Elon Musk. It's he may be more popular now before, but it's not the Elon Musk just paid half a billion dollars, $500 million to get a engineer back from another company. Do you understand what I'm saying? Why do we not know that engineer's name, and why is he not one of the most popular people? Because he's been deemed as one of the smartest people. I guarantee you, if we go to Japan, if we go to India, they know this guy's name. Do you
Right.
understand what I'm saying? And he's probably a common name. And so uh, we have a problem in American society in that we don't value education that much. And I cannot say that I can say there's a lot of reasons why. I don't necessarily believe that it's because it's free. And in this YouTube and after COVID and things like that, these kids believe that you can learn everything on YouTube. One of the experiments we actually did at my school is we actually saw a video on YouTube and tried to recreate it. And the kids was like, it turned out terrible. Like we were terrible at it. And so the kids was like, Miss Nia, you mean you can't learn how to do this on YouTube? And I was like, you can't learn how to do it. If it was that simple, everybody be doing it. So you can't learn everything on YouTube. So we've gotten that in the kids' head. You could be a YouTuber, you could be, and I'm constantly telling my kids that's a hobby. That's just like playing basketball or playing football. That's a hobby until you can turn it into a career. Until YouTube is paying you, that is a hobby. That's not a job. So you need to continue your education and continue pushing forward because you don't have a career. You have a hobby.
Right. Okay. So let me throw this out there that it's not. I'm not reinventing the wheel. This is centuries, thousands of years parents taught their kids. That's the way you got an education. Was the education as good as today or 100 years ago? These are interesting questions. The people gave their kids enough education that they would need, and in the year 1600, you didn't need that much education, and so you didn't get that much. In the mid 1800s and the early 1900s, and again, England is such a great country to look at because they industrialized early, uh, and they didn't have the immigration population that we had. When you look at American literacy is skewed because you have hordes of immigrants coming in, and they couldn't read because they didn't even barely spoke English. And so you don't look at American literacy rates, you look at England's, because they had not necessarily a homogenous population, but a stable population.
And what
It,
year? What are you saying? What year are you comparing us to?
well, so the English didn't start doing government schools until the early 1900s, like 1904 uh, to 1912, and they started doing some funny stuff where they would let the private schools keep operating, but they imposed standards, or they started funding it. And by the way, the English um, is a laboratory of sorts. Uh, in 1904, their literacy rate was 96%. You know what it is today? It's down. It's down to 88%.
I
The
mean, that's
government
still
school,
higher than us. That's
huh?
still much that's still much higher than us.
Well, okay, but they dropped in the course of the last 100 some odd years. They've gone down. They abandoned free market. They've abandoned freedom. They adopted government-run socialized education, and they've seen it fall off.
No, because if I mean, I would agree with you. There may be in the data may support that and things like that, and we could go in and we could look at it. It's causation versus correlation and things like that. But 96 to 88, we would love to see that. I mean, we would love to have that here in America. I mean, we'd love to have 88% of our population to be literate. We don't have that. So, uh, in that and we can look back in the 1950s. We don't need to go back to 1910. In the 1950s and the 1960s, as a society, even with integration, even with all the ills that we had in the civil rights movement and things like that, we still led the world in education. So we don't need to go back to 1900. We don't need to go back to 1700. We don't need to go back to any of these things. We can look back right in the last century. We had a model that worked. We just decided as a society, we decided a few things. We decided that we were not gonna. We wanted to pick once again. We wanted to pick winners and losers. We decided that certain people were deemed to be able to get less, and then we decided. I mean, probably in this century, in the 2020s, we decided as a society that everybody's going to be a YouTuber. It used to be everybody's going to be a football player, so you had to go to college. That's another thing too. So if you wanted to be a football player, you still had to make it out of high school and make it to college, right? So you still had to have some basic education. Now people are saying, I don't need any education. I'm going to drop out and be Mr. Beast.
Yeah, well, uh, yeah, that's interesting. So one idea in there is that it works. So yeah, the thing is, and this is gonna upset some people, but I don't know. Socialism works, kind of. What are we calling work? Again, it goes back to that question: compared to what? Do we want? Do we want a well-oiled machine that drives down the road? It doesn't pull. You get in those cars and they pull over to one side real hard, and you have to pull. Like, I mean, yeah, socialism is that vehicle that might get you from point A to point B. It's going to be a rough ride and it's going to suck. But socialism worked in the Soviet Union from 1917 until 1990. That's a full generation. People were born, lived, and died in that system. And you could argue that it worked. I don't want that. I don't want it to just be enough. I don't want it to just barely get by. I would like to excel. I would like to have nice things, and
Right.
prosper. We should prosper instead of just getting by, and that's
Well,
what freedom in the free market allows.
Well, I think that in order for us to do that, because even in a free market system, even in a charter system, even in those kind of system, we still allow one of the things that we can do very that doesn't really cost us any money is just starting saying no more failing schools. Literally, like you have a budget of hundreds of millions of dollars, and I'm telling you, the reason why I know this works is because in the state of Texas, they don't really allow failing schools. And if your school is failing, they come in, take you over, and shut you down. There are laws on the books in Oklahoma with the same type of system, but when we've allowed the system, so we're saying we want to go to this free market system, we're going to want to go to all these new things, parents, teachers, we've allowed parents, now we have the kids and the grandchildren of this system, they maybe not be able to read, they maybe can't do algebra and things like that, so it's not necessarily fair or not necessarily logical that we're gonna let that they're gonna now be able to teach their kids because they lack the ability to do that.
That's the strongest argument you've thrown up to me. But I would just say again, we do have a society that's built up enough. There are resources, there is curriculum, there are tutors. You talk about private institutions. If schools were private, and this is amazing. We're talking about failing schools, but go over to the marketplace and look at the markets. You don't have failing mechanic shops, not for very long. They go away. A failing parts store goes out of business. A failing tractor company, it's gone. They don't.
I,
They're going to fail and go downhill for several years, but it's not like the government schools where it's just decades of failure.
I
Man,
but
the market
but
corrects. The market
we've
nips
gone
that
to
in the bud.
we've gone through extensive measures to actually hide the fact that the schools are failing. Just this year, what did Ryan Walters? We can have a conversation with people who say about Ryan Walters. What did he do? Change the test score for every single kid in the state. Do you understand what I'm saying? So like we're going through we're taking just not just that though. I can have a I'm telling you, after we are implementing Common Core, and we can say what we want to say about Common Core, but Common Core actually said to schools and states that you could no longer give people a fake test. And so we had to give the national test on the front page of the Daily Oklahoma. They published an article that every school in the state would be a D or an F. So they were not going to give state report card grades for a couple of years, right? So in that, what is one of the things they did when that came out of the new report card system? Now you can't even get the state test scores. It's very difficult. I made 2 open records requests. They're very hard to get. So in that, we're hiding the fact, especially in Oklahoma State, because one thing about Oklahoma that you're right about, people have the poorest person here is still not as poor as they are in numerous other states and definitely in other countries. And the one thing that Oklahoma did, I don't even know if you noticed, but in some of the projects, which the project we low income housing apartments kind of things in Oklahoma City, they actually installed granite countertops here recently. They put granite countertops here. So they want people to believe that they're living a good lifestyle. And they don't want people to believe that they are really poor. And so by us doing that, and this is in a ruby red state under Republican management, by us doing that, we have less people to protest. So that's the reason why people aren't in the streets uh complaining about the education system. Number one, people don't really know that their children are failing. When I tell people that Deer Creek only has a 38, and they're the number one school district in the state, they're between number one, two, and three. Deer Creek, Bethany, Edmond, Jinx, they're all in the top. And they only have a 38% proficiency rate in eighth grade reading. How is that possible? How is it the number one school district in the state with some of the wealthiest people in the state? Have you seen the mansions in Deer Creek?
And see, in this, and that's the thing though, is that you talk about accountability. The accountability of the market is ferocious. If you don't do a good job, that gets out. You will suffer. You will suffer financially if you come with a substandard game. You know what
Well,
I mean? Like look at
we're
somebody that cuts your yard and they don't cut your yard right. You don't call them back. They're done.
I know, but not if you put a not if the person is blind. They're putting blinders on people. So
Here's what
therefore,
here's
hide
right,
the
but
fact.
that's why we need to go to a market based system. Here's what I'm saying is that the we trust the market for all the other things we do, from video games to shoes to everything. But then one of the most important things we're like, oh no, we're gonna do this different. For this, we're gonna use socialism.
But
It's
but
crazy. Why do we do that?
I mean, I would have a conversation with you. I mean, what you're saying, if we had a nationalized system or something like that, a nationalized free market system that said anybody can start a school and these are the standards to start it, and as long as the kids do da 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 da, you can have your school. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of where we are right now, actually, because you in almost every state in the country you can homeschool, you can have a micro school. It doesn't even cost. You don't have to even to start a co-op or a micro school. You don't
Right?
even need licenses to do it. So we kind of have that now,
You don't.
and the
Uh,
want that system are able to have it.
right. So we don't for two reasons. One, there's a monopoly. I understand you can, but when Lawton High is taking kids for free, and again it costs money, and this is why the voucher deal is such an interesting idea. Am I for a voucher again compared to what I think it's a better system than what we have, but it's also a problem. Uh, so real quick, I'll run through this idea. The voucher question. All right. Well, let me back up. It, we can't compete. I can't create an academy, Andy's Academy, and compete with Lawton High. There's no way. People will take rubbish for free over quality and have to pay. Now, there's always exceptions, but most people just can't do that. And so the government school crowds out private. And then you also have the monopsony, which is a monopoly but in reverse. A monopsony is when there's only one buyer. And we almost face that in the cattle industry. There's lots and lots of cattle producers. There are 5 packing houses in the United States. Maybe really only 4. But there's not a lot of competition on where we can sell. And we face the same thing in education is that this is why teachers are paid so low, is because there's only one buyer. It's the government. The government is paying teachers, and if you want to be a teacher, what other option do you have than to go work for the government? So the government gets to pay you what they want. If you had a market system, there'd be real competitions, and there would be competition for qualified and good teachers, and the pay for good teachers would go up, the pay for crummy teachers would go down, and
Yeah,
I think that would be great.
but I know, but I'll tell you real quick. You do understand that the teachers at Cal City and Heritage Hall in these free market systems don't get paid very much more than the teachers that are not in these crappy systems.
Right,
So
because because of the monopsony, there's no competition. It's not like they can pack up and be like, "Well, I'm going to go somewhere else." You have to eradicate socialism for the market to be able to work, because there's always the socialist system that's drawing all these other uh, that's drawing all the students, uh, that's drawing the tuition, as it were. There's not enough money going around, and it's all getting fed into the government system.
but I'll tell you right now, people can. I went, myself and 3 other teachers went out and started our own school, and we have a little small co-op, micro school, things like that. And next year, hopefully, we'll be able to get the voucher system, and more children will be able to attend. And we attend. Most of the children attend there for low cost or no cost, and most people don't become teachers because we think we're going to become rich. We become
Right?
teachers, come up with other ways to actually fund it and things like that. So there are options out there, especially under the voucher system. And people, somebody asked me, how could you run for a school board and you're for vouchers? And I had to tell them, I'm not for a system. I'm for kids. So if you're for kids, then you're for whatever is going to produce the outcomes for this child. So if I believe, and I do agree with you a little bit on this, and I've preached this a long time, that people complain about Epic. people complain about the vouchers, they complain about all these things, but they don't complain about their local school. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I tell people, Governor Abbott cannot pass vouchers in Texas because people love their local schools. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if the local schools would improve, then all of these gimmicky type things, and I call them gimmickies because that's what I think they are, just gimmicks, because they don't really produce the outcomes that we're actually talking about producing. And so with all these gimmicky things, the only reason we have them is because we have not had a real conversation as to how we improve the local school system.
Right. Um, yeah. Okay. So I got to run through this idea real quick on the vouchers.
I would like
Uh,
to hear.
well, and like I say, it's compared to what I think. I think the voucher system would be better than what we have now, but I don't think that it's the best system. Uh, so again, let's turn it back to agriculture. Everybody, see, not everybody's a farmer anymore, but everybody eats. All right, so there is that tie. So the objection is that there's poor people that can't afford food. So what would make sense as a solution? should we should we charitably and freely give as a society? And I mean society, I don't mean the government. I don't mean that we're going to tax this guy and use that money to buy groceries for this guy. That's not what I mean. I mean churches, communities, neighborhoods. Let's take care of our own. We don't need the government. Can we do that? Can we do that to feed people? That's what I want. I want the free, the 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 system that is free of coercion and compulsion. So we're not going to take anybody's money by force. We're not going to twist anybody's arm or threaten anybody or anything like that. We can do this voluntarily. All right, that's how I think people should be fed, and I don't think that people would die in the streets of starvation. That's how society used to be, anyway. But but let's say that for whatever reason we've rejected that idea. So now what do? Well, we can take all the land away from the farmers and have government run farms. That's what they did in the Soviet Union.
Welcome to Capital VIP Transport, where luxury meets convenience, right here in Oklahoma City. We're not your typical limo service. We're building something exclusive, something personal, just for a small group of members who value comfort, flexibility, and the VIP experience. Imagine this: whenever you need to ride in style, whether it's a night out, airport run, special occasion, or last-minute plans, we've got a vehicle ready just for you. No stress. No surge pricing, just smooth, same-day service from people you know and trust. We're inviting only 25 individuals in the Oklahoma area to join our Founders Club. As a member, you'll receive your very own VIP ride token every month, plus priority access to our fleet, premium service perks, and exclusive event invites. This isn't about showing off, it's about showing up in comfort, on your terms. We're putting the VIP back in Oklahoma City, and we want you to be part of it. Spots are limited, and once they're gone, they're gone. So if you're ready to ride like you mean it, go ahead and join us today. Click the button below, and I'll see you on the VIP list.
Sorry you missed it.
I got you though. I'm with you. Keep going.
All right. But no, the poor people can take their voucher, as it were, their food stamp card, and they can go to whatever farm or grocery store they want, and they can buy their own food. So we keep some semblance of a free market intact with privately produced food. Uh, you have competition there. You have profit and loss, the profit and loss mechanism uh, that is what drives success. And but then you also have this tinge of socialism where we are going to twist people's arm, we are going to coerce people, but we're going to give that money to the poor, and we have a voucher system. Uh, Man, if we did that for everybody, that would be insane. Uh, and this does tie back into history. Uh, in the early days of the United States, especially in the South, um, The idea of a government school, Jefferson was in favor of government schools, but only, this is interesting, only for the absolutely poor and completely destitute. It was a government school that if you had kids and you didn't know how to educate them and you didn't have the resources at all, then you could send your kid to the government school and they would make sure that your kid didn't turn out to be as big of an idiot as you are.
Well, I
That
know,
was,
but
that
you
was
know, a lot of people couldn't participate in that system, Andrew. So, and I think that's where we get. That's where you and I. That's the reason why some of these things, just history has not proven out, because so many times in history we picked winners and losers. We said you can't. We deemed that you can't go, and then secondly, one of the biggest problems in public schools right now is the fleecing of public schools. In that the wealthy is just like, okay, I got $1 trillion, I got millions of dollars and I need more millions of dollars, so I'm gonna fleece it out of this government run school system. Who are all these people getting the $62 million in consulting contracts? It's not me and you, Andrew. It's not people like us. It's the wealthy people using their connections and things like that to fleece the system. So when we have all of these systems and we know we have this right now, I mean, that's what we run into. That's the problem. As a society, the rich is deemed to say, we want more, we want more, we want more, and we don't want to give. Do you know how many churches I have gone to start a similar program like we have right now? I mean, I've been to so many churches, black and white. This is not a race thing. Right now I'm in a Free Will Baptist Church, which is probably one of the most conservative wings of Christianity and things like that. So people who are very different from myself personally, but they have helped us out. And I have to, Free Will Baptist Church of Edmond on Jordan, I have to say thank you, because they have people there who wanted, to maybe have the opportunity to have a school. So, unfortunately, Andrew, with this, some of society's greatest ain't some of society's greatest Achilles heels are interfering with this. And so when I ran from the school board, I was honest. I never said we were going to stop the fleecing of the schools. I just said we need to take some for the people. We have to leave
well
some of
that
the meat on the
yeah,
bone for the people.
and I appreciate that. And the thing is, unfortunately, is that's not a bug. That's the design. Government. That's what governments do. They are corrupt, and they will always be corrupt. And they're going to steal, and they're going to give us sorry services because that's what governments do.
But
I mean,
not everywhere, Andrew. We can't say that, because in some states, the government has said that education, healthcare, Oklahoma is 49th in healthcare outcome. We're 49th in education. We're 49th in like health. I mean, we're 49th in so many things because the government, the people here are okay with winners and losers. They don't, they got a bad doctor. There's a bunch of bad doctors here. They're okay with that because their doctor is not bad. They are, we have bad schools here. They're okay with it. What is the first thing they say, Andrew? Well, my kids go to a good school. My kids went to Edmond. My kids went to this school. My kids went to that school, and my kids go to a good school. What about, you know and so when we say that we want, and this is in the reddest state, we're supposed to be the most Christian. I've had this conversation with you. We're supposed to be the most Christian, the most conservative, the most, right? What would Jesus do? What would Jesus do? Jesus would do something like what you are prescribing. But what do we do in actuality? In actuality, the most conservative people in the state are involved in the fleecing, and
so
they're okay with it as long as they're getting the money.
it almost sounds it sounds like I've kind of won you over on the concept. It's the implementation that is, how do we go from the system we have to the system that I've described?
Well, the reason why I'm for something like this in this case is because the grand system has proven to have too many flaws, and there's too many winners, too many losers, right? I just got a kid that actually went to Deer Creek for the last 2 years. He's 10 years old and he can't read. That's insane. That's unbelievable. What kind of life is this child going to have? He's a man. You know what I told his mom? He's a man. At some point, he's going to have to take care of a woman, take care of a family, all those kind of things. If he can't read, add, subtract, multiply, and divide, that means the government is going to be taking care of him for the rest of his life, and or something even worse, he's going to be in a penitentiary or he's going to be dead. You know what I'm saying? Or in the insane asylum, because you want to start going crazy, start having kids and bills and family, and you can't take care of them. You know what I'm saying? That's enough to drive anybody mad. So how is that possible? How is it in a system that's so rich and so wealthy that they couldn't get one kid? Guess what? He done been with me for a week and he's already reading. Why is it? Is it because I'm such a great reading teacher? No, that's not it. Because he had it in him, and I asked him to. I told him and his mom, "You're gonna step up." Guess what? He made 100 on his spelling words last week. Can he read those spelling words? No. But was he at home working on the spelling words? Yes, because he knew the expectation that I set for him. So, in this system, right now, the government system has not proven to bode well. And so in that, we have to find the niche items,
Yes.
but I'm just going to be honest. I'm at the legislature. I'm talking to you right now. I'm talking to other conservatives. I'm talking to people that I maybe vehemently disagree with, on a lot of things. I'm having conversations with them because I want the system to start back working at least much better than what it's working right now.
Yeah. Well, Nia, I thank you for coming on. I'm kind of running short on time. We're trying to get over to Roosevelt, Oklahoma, and get some parts for a pickup. But it is fun talking to you, and I really appreciate your insight and you taking the time. Uh, are you do What are you doing besides teaching? Is there, I don't know, it's kind of standard that you do a shout out for the guest if you have a website or anything like that at all, you know?
Yeah, so we're actually in the process right now. Is that we've just released. Take this. It's alarm. We're in the process right now to where we just released our math curriculum, and we're releasing some of our curriculum and things like that online. And we're actually doing a tutoring service because, believe it or not, even though my system is so great, even though my system is so great. I still can't enroll a lot of students in it. Just like you said, people are taking a failing system over a non-failing system. So we have a lot of resources out. You can reach us on, I believe, Learners Academy's page, and that's where we're dropping some of those things. And so as we approach summer, be looking for some of that curriculum. If you are also, the last thing I want to say, if you're serious about starting an educational co-op or something like that in your area or your system, in your city, contact me because I have a lot of resources that can help you with that.
I'll think about it. I wasn't serious about it. That was just purely in the argument, like the example. I don't want to run a school.
But there may be somebody who's watching. There may be somebody who's watching that wants to
That's
run
good.
it, their local church and things like that.
I
So,
I just didn't want you to. I didn't want to misrepresent that. That'd be an April Fool's. It is April Fool's today that we're recording this, and that would be. Can you imagine me as a teacher? I got a partner right here riding with me, and anyway, but
okay.
everybody, y'all know the website, the Alliance.live. Come and join us. Share the show. This has got to be the best show I've done yet. So we're just getting better. Uh, Thanks for coming on, and we'll talk again.
All right. We need to talk next time about Mr. Norman Finkelstein. I want to talk to you about that next time.
Okay, all right, we'll do that. We'll see you later.